Men who instinctively take personal responsibility for themselves and their families eventually realize that being atomized, rootless cosmopolitans inhibits their ability to exercise their willpower. Male agency naturally leads into the creation of a patriarchy. Raise your sons to be strong, masculine and dominant. Raise your daughters to be soft, feminine and submissive. The bad behavior that we see for women today is simply a rebellion against men's failure to benevolently dominate. The failure of Western society is a failure to maintain the patriarchy.
Coming back! The patriarchy is returning. I'm James Fox-Higgins, your host of Patriarch Hour. I'm here with Noah Ravoy. Noah, how are you today, my brother?
I'm doing fantastic. This has been a really good summer. Beautiful weather, nice and hot. I guess for you it's been wintertime, but yeah, it's been great here. Been enjoying it. Enjoying to have a little bit of time off because the last 2 weeks I've had less clients. So it's been perfect for relaxing and hanging out with my kids and my wife.
Sounds absolutely sublime. There's a lot of good and beauty still happening in the world, despite what you see on your Twitter feed and on the news. But we are going to go for a little twist tonight. I want to actually start before we get into the juicy sort of intellectual framing that we're going for tonight, because this is a really important show. I think we're touching on the central topics of how the future will unfold for individuals and families in the West. And if they don't get these concepts that we're talking about tonight, they are going to be ill-equipped for the battles ahead. So it's going to be big and really important stuff. But I want to start a little bit with some clips from basically today's news. All of this has sort of happened in the last 24 hours. And I think this is going to really demonstrate clearly why sovereignty is the key issue and just how big a threat to individual sovereignty we're facing worldwide right now because of this pandemic and all of the associated tyrannies that are emerging. So the first thing I want to show you, and then we can sort of riff on this, Noah, is an event that happened in Melbourne today. People have been spreading the story like wildfire of Zoe. I've forgotten her surname, but Zoe, who was arrested, a pregnant lady who was arrested in her home for quote unquote incitement. The police barged in, used standover intimidating tactics. Now, they were kind of mild-mannered, these cops, but they had a big guy there to intimidate, and they arrested this girl. And people were, a little on the fence because it was quite mild-mannered. Well, we're going to watch another arrest that happened this morning in very similar circumstances. This guy posted a video on his Facebook Live that I've actually seen, and he basically said that he was intending to go to a protest tomorrow that's being dubbed Freedom Day, and it's happening in every capital city in Australia, a protest against the lockdowns, which is similar to what's been happening worldwide. But it's illegal in Melbourne because they have these tyrannical emergency laws that are forcing them all to stay in their homes for 8 weeks now. They're under house arrest. The whole state's under house arrest. And there's been warning and threat from the Premier and the head of the Victoria Police that if Melbournians go out before the lockdown officially clicks over in the bureaucratic office to the next stage, which is arbitrarily decided to be a week from now and not today, if they go out tomorrow, they're going to be in deep shit. And if they even encourage or incite others to go out tomorrow for this event, they are sending goons to your house to arrest you. So watch this.
Up, I was on the toilet. Yeah, I've just gotten up. What? Are
you going to open the door, yes or no?
Give me a minute.
No, now.
Well, what is this in regards to? What's it in regards to? You haven't told me anything.
Incitement.
Incitement for what?
You've spoken to your colleagues on the online, I know.
I told them not to go to the protest.
Well, come and tell
Is
me
that-
that.
Well, I'm telling you right now. I can speak to you right now.
Open the door. Now.
Why do you want me to open the door when I'm speaking to you guys right now?
We're going to have to break it.
Why?
Authorises forced entry.
What? Just explain what you're doing first, and then perhaps I'll comply easily. But you're just yelling. You got people everywhere. Explain. Just talk to me properly. Like, what is going on? You've just rocked up with force. Got no idea. Like early in the morning. Can you just explain, and then I will open the door? What's it to do with? Yeah, hold on. What's it to do with, though? What have I done? No, you didn't tell me. Wait. Yeah, okay, search warrant for what? What are you suspecting me of doing?
He said he's going to come downstairs, he's not, so...
Yeah, to do with what? No, if you do that, I will charge every single one of you. I'll take you to court, and you're going to lose. Look at that no trespassing sign, yeah? There's 7 court case precedents from the Supreme and High Courts of Australia.
You said you're coming down, you're not?
Yeah, because I'm trying to talk to you first. You're not telling me what you're doing.
Told you.
Yeah, what's it? Search warrant for what? What gives you the authority to have a search warrant? Whoa, you do that. You know what? Leave my shit. Don't break my stuff, you fucking retard. Hey, stop breaking my shit. Leave my shit. Whoa. Yeah, okay. All right, stop. I'll stop. Okay, all right. Okay, stop. I'm compliant. Stop resisting. You turn your hands behind your back. Get behind your back.
All right. So there it is. Now, this guy has since been released. He has a court case scheduled for May next year. He'll get to defend his innocence in May next year, assuming that the courts aren't completely congested with the thousands of fines and arrests that they surely have ahead of them in the last quarter of the year in Melbourne. So in his follow-up video...
Meanwhile, he has to pay to fix his door.
Yeah.
He has to pay to fix his door.
And he confirmed that. He did his little 2-minute follow-up today, and he just said, no, they're not fixing the door for me. I don't get to even discuss it until May. And he said... He went from saying that I'm intending to go and I'm not telling you to go because you can decide for yourselves, you're grown-ups, that they took that as incitement. And perhaps he said some things privately that were saying, I intend to go and you guys should come too. Like, if you're sending messages privately on Facebook to people saying that they should go to this illegal protest, you are breaking the law in Melbourne right now. Now, I don't morally agree with this law at all, but I'm just letting it, making you guys aware very clearly that they are looking at your private messages too. So don't muck around unless you want this to happen to you. You know, obey the law to the best of your ability until until they force you into a corner and you can't, right? But this guy is forced into a corner.
And if you feel you need to break the law, take precautions before. There are people who have decided in certain cases like this that I must be the one to break that law in order to overturn it, because I'm in a position to defend myself properly in court or whatever. And they've actually laid a trap for law enforcement with what they've done and how they've documented it and had their legal representation on standby. And that is an option for those who want to, in a nonviolent way, in this case, fight to defend their rights and the rights of their neighbors. If the whole point of these protests is to get a sufficient bulk of the population to come out against the government, because they can only arrest you one at a time. They can't arrest you 10,000 at a time. They have nowhere to put you, and they do not have the police forces to do that. The police are 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 200 people in the population.
And because these laws are so flimsy, they're so unconstitutional, they're made out of thin air because some bureaucrat stamped emergency on a piece of paper, right? This is the fake sovereignty that we live under. And they're proving, we've stopped believing, the masses have stopped believing that the government are actually authorized to do anything, right? And so because this Great Awakening has happened, they're now demonstrating their sovereignty by sending their most thuggish and woke cops out into the field to intimidate people. It is a fear tactic. Now, this guy, like Zoe, released same day, and in his video that he followed up, he just said, look, I'm fine. They treated me just fine. Everything's fine. They've taken my computers, which is a big inconvenience, but what are you going to do? I broke the law. Don't go tomorrow because it's a really bad idea. It's a trap. They're going to use the protests as an excuse to ramp up the lockdown and escalate the tyranny. That's his theory.
Ramp up the
on
lockdown.
That basis,
You're under house arrest. What are they going to do next? Come and handcuff you to your chair?
Camps.
Yeah.
There's plenty of headroom to ramp this up, and there will be camps. All right, and they've already been arming the Victoria Police with semi-automatic weapons, which is not something, and they've been training them with this in recent months, which is not something they've ever done before. So they're very, very afraid of the protests that are being discussed and being planned. And my advice is don't go, because it is going to get messy. There are likely to be many, many people who go. And if you're one of them, you're going to get into some kind of scuffle or mischief or legal trouble. So my advice is not to go. But the reality is, as the clamping down continues, people are going to get really unhappy. And my advice is worth pittance when the masses are enraged at their government and need to decide they need to overthrow it. This fire is a light.
Well, it is important, because what we're talking about here is an illegitimate use of authority. But if there is an illegitimate use of authority, then there must also be a legitimate use of authority. And how do we differentiate the two? How do we know that a moral authority is correct or incorrect? How do we know it's morally just or unjust? And there is actually a way that we can tell that. Moral authority and rights come from and are limited by our ability to deny nature and others' power over us. So when you think about our ancestors, we often go back to the hunter-gatherer times when a lot of this started to be figured out by human society, when we had very, very tiny societies. And we recognized that, a bear or a lion or some other predator, it did not recognize human rights. It did not recognize our authority. All it saw was we were a tasty morsel, and it would eat us no problem. And it was only our ability to physically overpower these predators that allowed us to have the right to continue to live another day. Likewise, our ability to hunt and overcome prey animals allowed us to eat for another day. There was no amount of convincing a woolly mammoth to roll over and die so we could eat it, because we got to feed our family, and we have a right to food, and we have a right to shelter. You couldn't verbally convince an animal to give up its life so that you could eat. You had to physically pursue it and take it by force. And so the moral authority.
That you can do that to the human animal now. You can just talk a human animal into its own rolling over in submission. That's the state of us. We're weaker than cows.
Yeah. You you have to force animals to give up their lives. You can talk a human into taking steps that will essentially end its life, and even if it doesn't die, will end the utility of its life. If you're locked in your homes for months on end, are you really alive? If you don't have the ability to go out and interact with your friends, to go to church, to go to the beach, to exercise, to enjoy nature, are you really alive completely?
No,
you're not
you're
dead.
certainly not. You're not alive to the fullest. And yeah, and while you're still breathing, there is a chance for hope, both in your heart through faith and in your corporeal temporal existence through resistance. But lone wolves, we've been seeing lone wolves who have acted out far too ahead of their time in reaction to what's been happening to the world, have always been deemed crazy. But it's getting, and we are absolutely in that basket of deplorables in the eyes of the enemy politically, both at the, and the enemy that I'm actually talking about, we should be clear, is it's not the left, it's not the far right, it's not the blacks, it's not China. It's not any of these groups. It's actually a group of people who are defined by their behavior and across all other demographics. Although you may find certain groups are more representative, of course, that's how things land. But the group is characterized by their parasitism. So the parasite class are the people who are our enemy, and they see us as a meal, just in the way that the lion sees its prey as a meal. They do not recognize our sovereignty, our individuality, or any of our rights, and they're very, very willing to use armed forces to take them away from us if they can wrangle political power. This is what they've been doing for a long time, and it's not a class war either, because the parasites exist at the very, very top of the chain. The richest and most powerful people in the world, the Bill Gates and the Clintons and the Epsteins and the Weinsteins, and these powerful elites in various corners of the culture war and the political war and the financial war, the very top, they are parasites, like vampires. They feed on us in the middle. And then at the very bottom, there are a class of people whose entire attitude is that they deserve a free ride, and they will happily use their own violence or other people's violence on their behalf to take shit from the middle class, which is generally, it's mostly white people in the West, but it crosses all demographics. But that middle class, which is actually the productive class, that's us. So there's the productive class, and then above us in power and wealth are the elites, and below us are the BLM Antifa types, who are the pawns of the elites, and they are collectively the parasites. That is who the enemy is.
Well, I like to divide it into, because it's not just that there are some people who orthonologically, it appears that they are in the middle class, or that they would have nothing to gain from supporting the parasites, and yet they do, because their psychology is made up in such a way that they belong to what I call the culture of submission. The vast majority of the world, even the world outside the West, the vast majority of the world is made up of people who belong to the culture of submission. They seek humans to submit to. They seek to delegate their agency. You delegate control over their thoughts, their feelings, their actions, their emotions, everything. Delegate the agency and the responsibility to someone else. And they are essentially willing slaves. Slavery has existed throughout human history, in part because there has always been people who sold themselves into slavery. That was the number one way in human history that people became slaves. They weren't necessarily captured or coerced into it. They chose slavery because it meant that they didn't have to be responsible for themselves. And people choose today political slavery because it means they don't have to be responsible for themselves. They get the necessities taken care of in exchange for total obedience. In contrast to that culture of submission, which is the vast majority of humans actually, we have the culture of sovereignty. This is the culture of people who choose sovereignty. And in order to get to sovereignty, though, it's not I as an individual cannot be sovereign. You as an individual cannot be sovereign. We together can become sovereign. This is because it all starts with agency. It starts with not delegating your agency, but fully embracing it, fully embracing the control that you have over your life, saying to yourself, I am the master of my own decisions. I am the one that decides what I do. And this doesn't mean that you don't follow guidance and direction of others who are wiser than you, or, that you follow a moral system, perhaps from the Bible or from your church. But it means that
compromise with your brothers and your comrades, that you work together and you arrive
well,
at
that's the next step. That's the next
decision.
step. Once you have agency, you have control over yourself. You have a certain level of freedom and power that you never had before as a slave. However, you are still a lone individual, and that makes you fragile and weak. Any man, no matter how strong he is, can be taken out by 3 other men, because that's just that's the nature of it. And so men of agency will federate together. And when the word federate means that they join together and they subsume a little bit of their individuality to the group. They maintain most of their individuality, but they will agree on certain principles, and they will agree to allow certain members of the group to be leaders. And this is where authority comes from. This is where legitimate authority comes from, is from the consent of the men who have the capacity to violently win freedom from nature and from other men. When those men federate together, they choose from amongst themselves leaders. And those leaders have moral authority. Any leaders who are not chosen through that process do not have legitimate moral authority. And today, in democracy, we do not choose our leaders that way. We have people who are allowed to vote who have no stake in it, who are not part of the process of maintaining and securing our sovereignty. And because of that, the leaders cannot help but be illegitimate. We would only choose illegitimate leaders in this way because those who do not have legitimate stake in our sovereignty are making the choices. And once you have sovereignty, once you have sovereignty, you can now give rights and authority to, for example, you can say, we're going to create rights for children and rights for women. That can only be done when you have sovereignty. The moment you lose sovereignty, all of your rights disappear. And any culture or country that has been conquered knows that all of their ancestral rights disappear, and only what the conqueror deems that he feels like letting them have, that's the only rights they get. So if you're a conquered people, you don't get rights.
And this is it. We can see that the way our laws and our rights have changed so rapidly, just in my lifetime, rapidly. I mean, 2001 was the last flashpoint in the major psyop of globalism against the sovereign mind, where we began to that steady descent into slavery. September 11, we're coming up to the 19th year anniversary of that tremendous event. And, anyone who has not yet questioned the validity of the official story given to us by our rulers about that event, I can't help you people. You have refused the red pill, and you need to take at least a little one now, because these red pills are coming knocking on your door soon enough. This is the reality facing everyone in the West as this escalates, and the acceleration is really on an exponential curve right now. Daily flashpoints all across America, daily flashpoints all across Melbourne. Things are going to get wild in the rest of this year, and it's absolutely obvious. So, on the question of the legitimacy of a claimed authority, I think what you described, this aristocratic model where men who had, who were lords, they were lords of their land in times of old, and they were called that because they had the swords, they had the armor, they had 10 sons who could ride on horseback with spears, and they would happily take in the peasants to work the land and to contribute to the marketplace. But if you upset the rules that they set for their land, they would slaughter you and your family. They were true sovereign men. Doesn't mean they were moral men, but they were sovereign men, and they were in control.
In most of Europe, if you didn't follow the rules, you didn't even. We did hang a lot of people if you were a rapist or a murderer, or you abused children, or heck, even sometimes for hitting your wife, you would get hung. That was the sentence for almost everything.
The sovereign men held the people to very, very high standards and very stringently, but they federated because they didn't want to have wars across their lands, as if they could avoid it. It was bad for everyone. Back when war wasn't profitable, before the industrial military complex, and and then they would elect, they would choose, or they would recognize that God had chosen among them the sovereign, the one man who was the strongest, the bravest, the truest, the most moral, the most clear-sighted, the most victorious in the most battles, the man among men. They recognized him. It wasn't like, oh, let's choose Jim, or Bob, like those, Jim Bob. Jim Bob is based. You should check him out. But it's not, like they didn't choose randomly. It wasn't, and they didn't ask their wives, like which guy is sexiest, Justin or whoever, none of that was important. The king would make himself known through his acts of sovereignty. And Christian laws recognized him. Robert the Bruce is a great example of the Scottish king who was, he was of royal blood. He had the right to the throne by lineage, but he was truly recognized in the time of rebellion against the masters who were England. He was truly recognized to be the sovereign among them, the one who really had what it took to lead. And so these federations under an aristocratic monarchic hierarchy were naturally sovereign and relatively stable hierarchies. But now we've got this universal egalitarian, universal suffrage, and normalization of everything, and throwing every single different disparate culture who don't have compatible ideals together in a big bag and shaking them up. And then we have rulers who without any merit or without any real capacity for honesty and intellectual discussion, even at this level, and we're not the smartest guys in the world, but even this is beyond their grasp. You look at the fat warthog of a man who is the commissioner of the Victoria Police right now, and I say that because I'm not in his state, so fuck you, buddy. He is a really pathetic excuse for a man, and he could not lead anyone into a battlefield because you'd outrun him in about 3 paces. He's overweight, he's completely stupid, he's a liar, and he makes absolutely no sense in the sentences that he strings together to try and justify this grab for power. He's a disgusting shell of a man, and no one should take his authority legitimately, but we do because of these structures and these pieces of paper and this indoctrination to be a culture of submission instead of a culture of sovereignty. Over to you.
Absolutely. No, and you mentioned about the divine blessing of kings. It was not the individual king that was divinely chosen. It was the process of making the king that was divinely backed. It came from the hierarchy of men is divinely backed, which we call the patriarchy. That's why we're talking about it on our show. Not just because it's an interesting subject, but when you have a hierarchy of men who defend civilization and defend it from other civilizations and from nature, that creates a hierarchy, which is a patriarchy. And that process, that is, especially in Christian lands, that process was governed by Christian rules. And therefore, the leader that was chosen out of a Christian process was the one that was accepted by God. It wasn't that you literally had God come down and poke his finger on the guy and say, him, it was. And
the reason why this, it wasn't something that anyone ever decided and just said, okay, this is how you choose a king. The men knew this in the very fiber of their being because it was so deeply ingrained in the culture, which was Christianity. And around this time of Middle Ages in Europe, we are talking about after the first, sort of 800 to 1,000 years and beyond of Christendom, where the church had clearly developed its doctrines, its understandings of how to interpret scripture and its traditions and sacraments. And they were stable until about, 1054. And the way that the church had always been run up to that great schism between East and West, it was always done by conciliar consent between the various dioceses. So the 5 main churches around the Mediterranean would come together for ecumenical councils, and they would debate most passionately for weeks, sometimes on end. And the first one was convened by Constantine, the first Christian emperor of Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire. Now, these ecumenical councils, they would have their disagreements, and they discovered many splits in the doctrinal and theological views of the church that would threaten to destroy Christendom. It would threaten to create a great schism. And so they would iron these out, and they would debate and discuss, and they would declare who the heretics were and who they weren't. And most of the time, the heretics, those who were deemed heretics, would yield to the authority of the church, and they would then change their ways. And it was through this sovereignty of the bishops, essentially, that was recognized by the parishes individually, that the church was able to form a really stable structure. And this was taught for hundreds of years as the way society was run. And the church had authority over the emperor, because the church was the representative of God, and the emperor recognized the sovereignty of God. So with these checks and balances in place, both below and above the king, and both in church and in politics, the owners, the landlords, these were the very, very slowly and carefully built structures that made the foundation for Western civilization. And we've flourished since those times, and those things have been gradually done away with, but only gradually, by stealth. And it's as we've been inching away from this hierarchy of aristocratic sovereign men under God and benevolently above the plebeians and the peasant class, as we've inched away from it and started to include every group in the decision-making process, we see that there is no rule of law anymore. There is no morality in law anymore. There's no God in law anymore. And it's certainly not in our education and the way our children are being programmed, and it's not in the culture. So we've been robbed of the great treasure that church and state built for us over those hundreds of years. But the good news is that we are now at the end of this era of decay and demoralization, and it's going to continue. It's going to burn down worldwide, but then we rebuild. And my final point is that when Western Rome collapsed, when the city of Rome was on fire, when it had been invaded by foreigners and usurped and subverted on the inside from degenerate liberals, when Rome was on fire and everyone was really scared, they turned to God. And that was the time when Christianity really flourished and blossomed, and then moved east. And the new Byzantine Empire was formed as a Christian empire, and it became in many ways a golden age in the development of Western civilization that lasted 800 years. Eastern Rome lasted longer than Western Rome, I believe, all told. And it was because it was under a Christian monarch following that hierarchy that we've been describing. Over to you.
Absolutely. And we see a lot of people, I see especially women, but also some men as well, looking at the current situation. And if you ask them, what are you feeling about it? Feelings are important, even for men. What do you feel about it? And they will feel anxiety, fear of what's coming. They will feel that hopelessness. But the reality is that we've already been living under a state of submission for quite a while. We've been forced to pay the vast majority of our income to taxes. Most governments of the Western world take more than half of your income to taxes. You have been forced to pay for your own replacement from third world immigrants. You have been forced to pay for the indoctrination of your children in school. You are already conquered people. The chaos that's coming is giving us the opportunity to win our sovereignty again. And it will come through the same process that we won our sovereignty in the first place, by developing our personal agency, by federating with other men, and by fighting to maintain our sovereignty. And that federation process is interesting. It's not that a leader comes along. This is part of a trend I see, especially on the right, but it's a general trend for those who are extremely politically, they think their solutions are in politics, is that they look for the one leader, their political messiah. And they say, well, when the leader appears, we'll all follow him and everything will be good, and he'll organize it.
Yeah.
And he'll kick out the globalists and whatever it happens to be.
It's Trump. It's Trump. It's Trump. I know. It's Tucker.
No.
It's Tucker. Wait. It's JFK Jr. back from the dead. Stop waiting for the great leader. Be a great man yourself.
Well, originally it happened by small groups of men gathering together to defend their families. You can liken it in modern times if the police came to a neighborhood, and there are neighborhoods, not white neighborhoods, but there are neighborhoods where when the police go there, everybody comes out of their home and they confront the police together. And the police tread very carefully in these neighborhoods. They fear these people. They fear these people, and these people, half of them aren't even legal in the country. They could be removed at a moment's notice if the government decided to do it. But those people, they have less fear of the police than they have of losing their sovereignty. And so they come out and they fight.
And why do you think, they are making Westerners mask up, stay away from each other, don't socialize in big groups? All of this is indicative, whether the virus is real or not. And my personal beliefs are, total wrong think. I think the whole thing is a sham from top to bottom. But I'm crazy, so don't listen to me. You make your own decision about these things. But they're going to leverage advantage by separating people and preventing men from being able to federate. And every time there's been a group of strong men get together and begin the whisperings all throughout history, begin the whisperings of rebellion against the illegitimate authorities, of course, it's in their best interests to maintain their power, to break it up. This is why they can see that the information superhighway, as we used to call it, has completely eradicated their ability to contain the narrative. It took a while for us to get here, but we're going to see way more pushback from organizations like, any day now. Goodbye, YouTube. They are going to boot us off. This channel will be nuked and disappeared sometime, but we're ready now. We've built our arc. Champions of the Light is working. RRTV is working. This is recording to our own servers that they can't touch. So, we have to be anti-fragile in the online space, but we have to also be as anti-fragile as we can be in the physical space, not just against the authorities, but against these illegitimate uprisings as well, against the other parasites who are going to look for chances to take advantage of the unfolding chaos in metropolitan and suburban areas and begin raiding parties. The sovereigns will make themselves known, and it's white people are going to be late to the party, as you were just saying. It's these other groups have already federated. The Muslims especially, they're going to be fine. Their communities are going to be great. And we can observe and certainly learn from those groups in history and today. But at the moment, we are disparate, separated slaves. And I want to play another clip that we can riff on. If you doubt what I'm saying and think I'm crazy, don't take it from me, and don't even take it from Tucker, whose clip I'm going to play. Take the words from the head of the World Health Organization and from Bill Gates, right? Have a listen.
Not true anymore. According to a new announcement from the World Health Organization, a vaccine, even if we get one, will not be the end of all of this. It will never end. You can get your injection, they'll make you get it, but you'll still be under arrest. The World Health Organization says that finding a vaccine is not the goal. Reordering society is the goal. Quote, we cannot go back to the way things were. That's a direct quote from the leader of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros, who, by the way, is not really a doctor. Because COVID-19 is not a public health crisis, really, or even a mere virus. According to Tedros, COVID-19 is, in fact, and this may surprise you, COVID-19 is really about global warming. As he puts it, quote, the COVID-19 pandemic has given new impetus to the need to accelerate efforts to respond to climate change. Bet you didn't see that coming. Bill Gates did. He agrees with that wholeheartedly. Earlier this month, Gates posted an essay to his personal website, which you probably haven't seen, arguing that the lesson of the corona pandemic is that the rest of us will have to sacrifice even more to save the Earth from warming. Now, for people who are not billionaire global influencers, this is all pretty confusing. Quick, what does the coronavirus have to do with climate change? Well, for one thing, China caused both of them. That's the obvious link. But that is definitely not the point Dr. Tedros and Bill Gates are making. Both of them bow before China. They would never meaningfully criticize the Chinese government. So you can be assured that's not the connection they're drawing. No. For Dr. Tedros and Bill Gates, pandemic and climate change share a very different connection. Both are useful pretexts for mass social control. Both are essentially unsolvable crises they can harness to bypass democracy and force powerless populations to obey their commands. Now it makes sense. Ever wondered why our leaders consider the coronavirus a major public health crisis, but not, say, suicides and drug ODs? Well, this is why. When a 26-year-old mother in New Hampshire drops dead from fentanyl, Bill Gates and Dr. Tedros don't get more powerful. Her death is useless to them. So they don't care.
They really don't.
This is about our agency. They want to break up our federation. You see, just as we have a process to develop sovereignty, they have a process to remove sovereignty. And it starts by undermining our agency, preventing us from federating together. And by doing that, we simply can't win and can't fight to win our own sovereignty. Now, once our sovereignty collapses, all of our human rights collapse as well. And you know that you have lost your sovereignty when you cannot enforce your human rights. So if you cannot enforce your right to travel around your country, for example, if you cannot enforce your right to go to work, to own a business, to open a business, to engage in commerce with your neighbors, then you have lost your sovereignty. And you're only going to you will not get it back through a political process. There is no political process that can create sovereignty. Therefore, there is no political process that can give it back to you. Sovereignty was created by men willing to use violence to protect themselves from tyrants and from other men and from other countries and from other groups and from nature. And it can only be regained by that willingness to use violence. Very often the willingness in modern times, the willingness itself has been enough to modify the government's behavior. I think now they've gotten too big for their britches and they're going to not back down, but the choices we have are to become men again or to allow ourselves to be conquered and be slaves.
That's right. And you've got to understand at home, guys, this is not Noah and I telling you to go out and take a particular action in resistance to the government, right? What we're trying to do is help you to understand the overarching narrative, the patterns of history, and the realities of nature. Step outside of the rhetorical paradigm if you can, and don't worry about questions of morality for a moment and just look simply at the reality, the proof that's in the pudding, right? That man who we saw arrested in Melbourne this morning, there was this amazing moment, a dreadful moment, and I'm tempted to play it again if you think it's a good idea, Noah, but this chilling moment in there where he's the guy's smart. He knows his stuff. He's got his trespassing sign up. He's got his 7 high court precedents marked in writing on his front door, and he's yelling at them saying, no, you guys are being violent and unreasonable. You haven't told me why you want to come into my home. I haven't seen your badges. I don't know if you're even who you claim to be. And he's making an entirely rational case with as much vocal force, and he's sticking his heels in and saying, no, you must answer to me before I let you in. And then they pull out the battering ram and he says, you do that. And you hear him realize as the battering ram goes through the glass, as he's about to threaten them, he realizes that if he threatens them, they're going to kill him. If he takes any violent action to defend himself in this situation, they're going to kill him. And his sovereignty was false. His ownership of his home is false. He does not own that house. The state of Victoria and its goons own his house because they can just walk right in, bash the door down, and put him in handcuffs, take his computer and his phone, lock him up, set a court date when he's going to be punished for something that's not even a crime, and then send him home to tell us that they were very, very nice to him. All right? He has no sovereignty, and he realized it in that moment when they penetrated his home. And it's it's a powerful moment. So I think we should watch just that part of it again.
I was on the toilet. Yeah, I've just gotten up. What?
Are you going to open the door, yes or no?
Give me a minute.
No,
Well, what is this in regards to? What's it in regards to? You haven't told me anything.
Incitement.
Incitement for what?
You know you've spoken to your colleagues on the online, I know.
I told them not to go to the protest.
Well, come and tell me that.
Well, I'm telling you right now. I can speak to you right now.
Open the door. Now.
Why do you want me to open the door when I'm speaking to you guys right now?
We're going to have to break it.
Why?
Authorizes forced entry.
What? Just explain what you're doing first, and then perhaps I'll comply easily. But you're just yelling. You got people everywhere. Explain. Just talk to me properly. Like, what is going on? You've just rocked up with force. Got no idea. Like early in the morning. Can you just explain, and then I will open the door? What's it to do with? Yeah, hold on. What's it to do with, though? What have I done?
Come down and open the door.
No, you didn't tell me.
We did.
Wait. Yeah, okay, search warrant for what? What are you suspecting me of doing?
He said he's going to come downstairs. He's not, so...
Yeah, to do with what? No, if you do that, I will charge every single one of you. I'll take you to court, and you're going to lose. Look at that no trespassing sign, yeah? There's 7 court case precedents from the Supreme and High Courts of Australia.
He's the big man
Yeah,
right
'cause I'm
now.
trying to
He
talk
thinks
to you
he's got the
first. You're not
power.
telling me what you're doing. Yeah, what's it? Search warrant for what? What gives you the authority to have a search warrant? Whoa, you do that. You know.
You hear that? His voice even cracked. He sounded like a teenage boy, and I don't mean to insult the man. It would have been terrifying.
No.
I'm sure I would have reacted in a very similar way. It's a terrifying situation, right? So, but that's the measure of a man, is how he faces a genuine threat. And a man on his own, as you said before, it doesn't matter how big. He could have been the fittest, best fighter. He could have been a UFC champ, and if they'd brought enough of their goons along and decided to take him down, he loses. So without federation and without a team of buddies around him, he has no sovereignty. And we only realize how alone and disparate and unsafe we are in that moment when somebody penetrates our home or penetrates our body with a projectile or a blade. You know, they're chilling moments for people when they realize how little power they truly have. And safety in numbers is what the left have successfully gathered so that they can now burn down the cities of America with impunity, and it will spread.
And earlier, you mentioned camps. You know, if they can come to your home, kick your door open and take your stuff, there's no reason they can't take your wife, your children. They can't take you off to a camp.
Oh, but we would never. But we would never.
The same people. Well, you know, he was trying to defeat them with words. They don't care about your words. They don't care about your rights. They don't care about the law. They don't care about court precedents. They only care, are you capable of resisting or not?
Mm-hmm.
And do you belong to a group that will resist? Is the cost of trying to put you in jail going to be higher than the benefit we're going to get out of it? That's what they care about. Governments make a cost-benefit analysis for every program, and they say, will getting control of these people be more expensive than the value we're going to get out of it? And if you can implement sufficient countermeasures to what the government is doing to make it so expensive that they simply refuse to bother with you, to refuse to mess with you, then you're going to have a level of sovereignty. But if you can't do that, you know, he
all
basically,
you're describing is what our states have done.
I'm trying to describe it without anyone going to jail, but you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but this is the thing, Noah, is that you know, I've never incited any action from people. I've never said go out and do this. Go out. I don't do that. I'm here to help you understand the intellectual and the spiritual questions at hand here. I'm here to speak the truth, and there's no lie in what we've said, because we're speaking in principles that have been demonstrated time and time again. My advice, my explicit and honest, I'm not saying this to cover my ass. My advice to the people who watch my show is get, you know, away from danger in any way that you can legally. If the lockdowns are relaxed in Victoria and they open the borders, please come to New South Wales and get out of that tyrannical state. Do it as soon as they'll let you, because if you go out and break the law, if you go out, and the law changes every day, I know it's not fair, but if you break the law and if you go to these events like they're staging tomorrow, you are likely to get yourself and your family into a world of trouble. You're likely to get physically hurt. You're likely to get locked up. And I don't want that for you. You know, I love you guys, and I want you guys to be safe, and I want you to have a future where you can have children, you know, if you don't already, and where you can raise your children safely. And so we are in retreat in the West. You know, and we are too broken and too weak. We're too docile and livestock-like to fight back. So where we can retreat to and gather with our friends is what we need to do. You know, we need to safely get away from the dangerous areas. You need to stop kidding yourself that the city centers are going to be a fun place to live for much longer. And you need to move out and find communities of people and start building communities of people. You know, if I can facilitate people voluntarily coming together onto farms through Champions of the Light, please come and join Champions of the Light. We can set up groups. We want to connect, you know, honest, moral people in all of the Western world. We want to connect you guys through our social platform, which we vet carefully and we moderate carefully. And we want to help you guys to gather legally and homestead and grow food and grow families and have a federation of men who work out together and are great friends and never break the law. And, you know, but just live as free from these centers of tyranny that you can, because they can't control everywhere. You know, I'm not asking you to commit a crime. I'm not asking you to do anything that the police are telling you not to do. I'm asking you to just make a plan now, work with whatever freedoms you have left, and, you know, improve your situation so that you can be safe. And what we're describing in terms of the fighting and the resistance and the rebellion and the battle against this tyranny, we're just describing history and how things actually work, because we don't have that much influence. Not many people are going to take my advice. And there are a lot of people out there who think about all of this very differently than we do, and they're acting on instinct, and they're going to want to get out there and fight in the streets. And, you know, I think they're ill-advised to do that. These territories are lost. You know, Melbourne is lost territory. I don't think you're going to get it back. I'm sorry.
Well, I do believe we're going to have a reconquest of the West. And I
eventually,
think
yes,
it will come, and it's not a thing that's going to be. It's not going to come like that. The reconquest of Europe from Muslim invasions. So Europe lost its sovereignty to the Muslim invasions on a large portion of Europe. It was taken over by a foreign entity because the hierarchy had broken down in the countries that were there. They had lost their martial spirit. There was a lot of infighting. A lot of the groups that had federated the federations had weakened. And so that gave Islam a chance, a foothold in Europe, and they entered in. And to some degree, that was with the cooperation of many of the European powers. They said, "Hey, let's stick the Muslims on our competitors over there, and that will weaken them, and then, you know, that will improve our position." So there's a lot of infighting, a lot of sacrificing the brothers in order to get an advantage over them. And it took 700 years to reconquer Europe. That's 35 generations. 35 generations of men had to fight, die, conquer, hold land, and they did it one step at a time. How long does it take to walk from the north of Portugal to the south? You know, you can walk it pretty quick. So they weren't even reconquering at the speed of a man walking. Yeah, they were reconquering, you know, a kilometer a year type thing. It was a very slow process.
And even if it wasn't every year an advance in territory, right, it was an advance in their resolve, because they were raising sons. You know, occupied and threatened people breed like crazy, and you wonder why there's these booms after these wars and why people are knocking up their wives right now because of COVID. The instinct to survive. When we are fully trapped in the R-selected modality, which we are right now in the West, you know, life. The threats to life and the scarcity of supply means we want to breed, we want to make babies. And it's a good thing. It's a natural survival instinct that God put into us to multiply so that we could grow our culture and our tribe and be strong and federate. So having lots of children, lots of sons in the Iberian Peninsula, you know, over time meant that after 35 generations, look how quickly they've deprogrammed the Briton, right? The British man is, on average, I mean, there are always some exceptional men, and they're doing great work in this field of, you know, the culture war right now, and I salute them. But the average British man right now is so completely cucked. And this programming to destabilize and shut down the British Empire and destroy the British spirit has happened in only 4 or 5 generations. 4 or 5. So imagine what you can do in 35 generations to reverse the attitudes and reprogram your sons to be men of sovereignty among men of sovereignty with a common cause to defeat their singular enemy, the invaders, right? I mean, we just have to have the long game view. You know, your life, our generation are the regenerate generation. The boomers destroyed us. You know, they traumatized us. They gave us a really broken satanic world, but we're awake. We're the first generation who are waking up, and the Zoomers were born into a much more awake and aware world, and they're dividing, but the Zoomers on the side of Christ are going to be very, very powerful men. You know, they're going to be very sovereign men compared to our generation, but not anywhere near compared to Robert the Bruce. So it's a generational thing, and we've got to think 8, 9, 10 at least generations into the future. That's when we can have created a true nation, maybe even a global nation of men who act in a common cause, in my preference under Jesus Christ, because I believe that is how we win. And but under a common action of reciprocity in federation against these invaders and these enemies. But it's not our generation's job to win this fight and turn it around and fix it. We cannot fix it. You were raised on video games. You've got no delayed gratification. You've got no patience. We do not fix this in 4 hours of speed running, right? We do not fix this in 1 generation or even 2 or 3. You have to be breeding. And to breed, you have to survive. So get out of the danger zone, follow the law, don't put yourself at any unnecessary risk, federate with other families, start big farms and big homesteads together, and breed your children. You know, choose your partners from among your new tribes. This is how we actually get there.
I will add one thing to that, though, that at the moment, our level of sovereignty has decayed to a point where they can just come and take our children. The Muslims were doing this in Europe. They had, they called it the child tax. They would come and take your children, and they'd take them back, and they would abuse them or turn them into soldiers or whatever it happened to be. The same people that are running government right now that have the power to walk into your home anytime they want, take anything they want, are also pro-pedophilia. They're pro-turning your boys into girls and your girls into boys. The same people that would love to get their hands on your children in terrible ways, we at the moment have very little ability to stop them. Our very first goal should be able to develop the capacity to prevent them from taking our children. Not through government and laws and courts. They don't care about those things. Is developing the martial capacity to prevent them from kidnapping our children. That's the number one, at the moment, that is the number one thing. And often it's what you said, you're going to have to move to areas where the government is less against you, where they are, or where the population is more of the culture of sovereignty. And this is
the
going to be a difficult
homogenization
thing.
of communities. You know, we're realizing that even though we get along mostly with our foreign neighbors, you know, with our Chinese neighbors and our Vietnamese neighbors and our, you know, all the different ethnic groups, you know, for the most part we get along. Some we don't get along so well with. But, you know, the reality is when it comes down to this kind of crisis, birds of a feather are going to flock together, as I've been saying for years now. And actually, I'd say most everyone's going to just be able to admit now that they would rather be around people like themselves. And so we federate on these instinctual lines first, you know, my race, my religion, they're my people. Race and religion are where people go. We've tried the broader strokes. It doesn't work. So these are the dividing lines that people are going to gather under, and we need to create. I totally support every group doing that. It's necessary. It's good. Every
group except for whites is totally on. Every group except for whites is totally on board with living with their own group. We're the only ones that have a problem with it, and I think honestly, the left is quite racist to deny that people want to be with their own groups. They're essentially denying the instinct of every single minority group.
Well, look at all these Black Lives Matter activists who are talking about, creating black-only cities. I think that's a fucking great idea. I would support that if it's done reciprocally and through voluntary means, preferably, but it's not going to happen that way. There's going to be force involved in all of these shake-ups and repatriations and redesignations of areas. But the race division is there. It's always been there. It's always going to be there. And it's not a matter of hatred or vilification of others. It's just a matter of we need to go where we have the best chance of survival and thriving into the future. And people know at a very, very visceral gut level that it's with their own kind, you know? And I'm finding
even these individuals who want to create, like, you know, the all black cities, for example, they will not be able to maintain their own sovereignty over those cities if they didn't earn it in the first place. They would have had to have the ability to develop agency, to federate together, and then to defend territory against all comers in order for them to be able to build a society, because that process creates changes in the psychology of the people that are holding that land that allows them to hold it independently. When you are given something and you do not go through the process of earning it, if you're given reparations, for example, and you don't go through the process of earning it, it doesn't have the same effect on you psychologically, and therefore it is very easy to lose it. This is known with when people win the lottery. Usually they're bankrupt 5 years later. They're worse off 5 years later than they were if they hadn't won the lottery. That's how bad it is to just give people money. Money that is earned, you have a different psychological relationship with what you've earned than what you've been given. And this is why the rights that we have been given by those who have taken power over us, we have a different relationship to those rights than rights that we would have earned through our own force of arms. And so we are seeing the psychological changes that it has on people. We demand rights that make no sense. We aren't willing to defend the rights that do make sense, such as a right to freedom of truthful speech. We don't defend what is valuable, and we defend what gives us pleasure and comfort instead. And this is the result of not having earned the rights we have, but having them handed to us basically by our ancestors who defended and fought. We're not the sovereign men anymore. We are the men who were granted rights and privileges by our ancestors.
And when we yield to the bestowing of rights by these authorities that rule over us currently, and when they don't have any really true interest in us because we're not family with them anymore, we don't know where we belong. We don't know who our people are. We're scattered so much. There's no loyalty, and there's no genuine, heartfelt, racial pride or connection on a biological or spiritual or religious level in the way that there used to be within a nation or within a country, which was, ruled under one system. And so, when these are the people who are pushing us around and they don't care about us in this way, the sensible, instinctual action is to find those who do. And this is what we've all been doing online, and this is why they're always trying to wedge themselves in and get in the way. I mean, look, right now, we don't normally get, that many viewers on our show. We've only got 25 viewing now, apparently. That's fine, but we almost never have more thumbs down than we have thumbs up, right? We'll always have 3 or 4 people hitting the thumbs down. Right now, I'm seeing 17 thumbs up, which is, average compared to the number of people watching. That's about average. Just over half of people will hit the thumbs up. Please hit the thumbs up if you're watching as an experiment with us, because the thumbs down keep rising above the level of number of people watching. And I don't know if it's just because it's the feminists tuning in because they hate Noah, but it would not surprise me because I've come into contact with some propaganda bots over the last few days on social media who are pushing the blue church narrative, who are pushing the Joe Biden must take the presidency at any cost narrative. And they're looking for keywords, and they're looking for the kinds of conversations that are going to harm the narrative, and they're shutting them down. So we're trying to get resilient online, but we need to have that resilience in person as well and on the land. I want to play. Sorry, I don't want to play. Sorry, I think
could we just answer? Could we answer a question from the comments first?
Go for it. Yeah,
that will encourage more interaction. So someone, Vocal Pelican answered. Please answer my question. Who gets to decide what is good? It's whoever has the military, martial, and violence power to decide. And that does not sound like that doesn't sound like an answer that is comfortable for most people, because most people are approaching it from a slave morality. They're approaching it from the position of people with no power. And it's very painful to admit that you can't get to decide what's right if someone can come along with more power than you and force you to do something else or die. So we could say it is right that I raise my own children, that I raise them with my own belief system. But if the government can come and take them away from me, I can claim it's not good. That's irrelevant. Reality says they had the power and they came and did it. And then therefore it is up to good men to be able to enforce what is good through having sufficient power to do so. And at the moment, we don't have that power, and we have to regain it.
And I would answer from the spiritual perspective here, because these are the two important angles. Noah's describing reality, natural law, the way things actually work, not how you'd like them to work, not how they should work. There's no oughts in reality. There is what is. And so that's the reality, is he who has the capacity for violence and the large enough federation of colleagues to implement that violence against another group. They're the ones who decide what's good. And this is why we are in such a degenerate world that is saying good is evil, evil is good, up is down, black is white. But from the spiritual perspective, if we do not embrace an ultimate good, and if we do not follow sustainable laws that have been taught to us by the Lord Jesus Christ, the golden rule of reciprocity, being the most essential tool for politics to be stable and successful across time and to flourish. If we don't practice that spiritual commitment to a higher value, then we're going to turn into a federation of degenerates as well who do terribly evil things. And so we need to first recognize the reality that without federation and the capacity for force, any power or freedom we have is illusory. And then if we ever find ourselves in a position where we do have the power, or perhaps, and more importantly, right now and in our baby steps across these multiple generations back towards regaining that power, we must be doing it on a foundation of stone, which is the rock of Jesus. We can't do it on a foundation of sand. We can't do it on moral relativity. We can't do it on do what you feel, and we can't even do it on a flimsy premise like liberty, because some liberties are not good for you. Some liberties are harmful to you and to your children and to the prosperity of your posterity across multiple generations. So freedom is not an ideal built on rock. Freedom is built on sand. This is why we're seeing America collapse in the way that it is. So if we build what we build over these next generations, if we build it on this foundation of Christian morality, right, Christian values, and each man genuinely acting in the way a Christian should, praying, fasting, caring, loving his neighbor as himself, and also locking arms with his neighbor and saying, you shall not pass unless you are a friend, to people who want to threaten that federation. So we have to recognize the martial reality, and then I believe that we will succeed if we take our morality from the spiritual reality of Christianity.
And it's interesting that even Jesus Christ, when someone called him the good teacher, he said, who is good except for God? In other words, only God is good, because only God has the power to, without any equal, implement what is good. There was a recognition there of God's power when it said that only God is good. It was not saying that only God is capable of goodness, or only God is capable of implementing a good outcome. What it meant
God is tantamount to good. He is good.
Yes,
he
exactly.
is what good is. Yes, yeah.
Exactly. And a part of that is his ability to his power and his complete sovereignty. He's the only true sovereign, his complete sovereignty over the universe. Now, we have a limited degree of sovereignty. Even if we are a high agency man federated with other high agency men, we have a limited sovereignty because we are unable to completely control the universe and the world around us. But we, by exercising our sovereignty in line with what is right, with the Christian rules and with natural law, we do so in a way that ensures actually that our sovereignty is much stronger than if we do it in a amoral way. An amoral sovereignty will experiment with, as you mentioned, liberties which are bad for us. A lot of the reason that culture has disintegrated is because we said, okay, there's no more rules throughout the rule book. We're going to just do whatever we want. We're not the first generation to try this, by the way. We're going to do whatever we want, and we're going to see what happens. Well, we saw what happens. The people complaining that there's no such thing as a slippery slope. Yeah. Well, there's at the bottom of the slippery slope is a whole bunch of people complaining that there's no such a thing as a slippery slope.
And we can't save those people,
No.
They have a rude awakening coming upon them. And this is it, now is the time to speciate, now is the time to find your tribe and make those federations stronger and better and as physical and proximal as is humanly possible under the conditions. And that's also going to take, you can't just wait till all your internet friends gather together. That's a great goal that we could work towards, but you also need to get to know who's living around you right now. Get to know your neighbors, and this is deeply Christian, and this is also going to set you up well. But go and find right now, however you have to do it. If you have to look up phone numbers in the white pages and call your neighbors, or if you have to throw a paper plane with a letter across to the next balcony, or if you have to put a megaphone on the wall and shout at them because they're not going to let you get together physically. However you have to do it, build relationships with the people living immediately around you and offer your services to them. How can I help you? Are you okay? What can we do to make this better and easier and more secure for ourselves? Federate with your immediate neighbors right now. Get to know them. There's no time left, as we can see from this footage. If you don't have a federation immediately available to you of some kind, then you are absolutely helpless. You're a leaf in the breeze. and you can't be that. That's not sovereignty at all. That's nihilism. That's nothing. You've got no power, no control.
And don't follow the Jordan Peterson concept of spend all your time cleaning your room, i.e. spend all your time developing your agency and yourself. You need to do in parallel the three things. You need to, while you are developing yourself and your family as well, your family is an extension of you. While you're developing yourself and your family, you must be federating with other men, and you must be preparing to defend your sovereignty. You must do all three things at once. The reason is that you cannot truly develop yourself as a man if you do not belong to a group of men or federated with a group of men that help you as a man to develop. We do not develop in a vacuum. Men require other men to develop into their highest level of masculinity. The Bible even says this. It says, as iron sharpens iron, so the face of one man sharpens another. And this is because it is important for us to sharpen each other, to improve each other as men, and to help to, when you sharpen a knife, you don't just refine the edge. Very often you'll have chips in the knife if you've been using it hard. And, maybe you hit a bone while you were cutting into the meat, and you get a chip in the knife. You have to polish that chip out. You have to polish each other's imperfections out. And we do this by associating together, but it's not enough to simply associate together. Otherwise, a bunch of men hanging out at a bar would become elite, awesome men over a period of time. We must be engaged in a task that is worthy of our attention. And certainly achieving sovereignty is a task worthy of our attention. And so being a high agency man, federating with other men as we seek sovereignty, that is the goal for all men today. And
the single best activity to begin with is working out, making yourself jacked together, hitting the gym. It's not a vanity exercise anymore. It's life or death. Get jacked, boys. Come on. We got to do this. We have to work harder than ever. If you're not doing 100 reps a day, it's not enough. If you're not breaking a sweat every day and beating your personal best every day, you don't have what it takes for what's ahead.
If you're not uncomfortable,
men. Yeah, get uncomfortable, because they're going to make it a lot more uncomfortable for you if you have no power and no sovereignty at all. The discomfort that you carefully apply to build your tolerance to discomfort now, and that you apply in a focused and energetic way to develop your physicality as a man, that's what's going to define your mind, your spirit, and your actual martial ability to resist tyranny and violence against you, especially when you do it with a group of 5 or 10 men or 20 men or 100 men eventually, or, some generations down the line, we will have 10,000. Men who are
and bring your young
really
sons with you.
Absolutely,
bring your young sons for two reasons. They need to see how men interact with each other. Now they have to be old enough to be part of that group. Of course, a 3-year-old probably isn't going to do that. Historically, from 7 years old onwards, boys spent most of their time with their father and his peer group. They were already on there. They were men in training, essentially, from 7 years old onward. We didn't baby children.
They've taken this away. They've taken this away with schooling and feminism and all the trans stuff and everything now.
Not your children and my children. Not your children and my children. No, it's amazing.
They will try eventually.
People say, "Oh no! If the government came to my house to take my kids away, I'd fight." Yeah, but you're sending your kids voluntarily to school. You won't even fight to keep them at home and homeschool them, but somehow you think you're going to fight to protect them if they want to take them off to a camp to indoctrinate them. You voluntarily send them there for the vast majority of their waking hours.
Yeah.
What
are you doing with them when they are home? Are you watching TV with them? Stop it. Get help. Get outside.
They get indoctrinated at school, then they get home to get indoctrinated by TV.
You're watching the fucking Simpsons to just watch that model of a man, Homer Simpson, who defined a generation. No. And you've got to be physical with your kids, boys or girls. We need to equip the whole next generation for war. We don't want the women to fight it. We want to restore the patriarchy so that the women don't have to fight it. But the war is everywhere, and women need to have some martial ability too to be able to defend their children. So everyone should be working on this together. But it's up to us men to lead the way. Women will naturally follow. Women will look at the success that you're having and the sovereignty that you're gaining. Not only will they find it attractive and appealing and securing in their hearts, but then they will ask, will you work out with me? Can I join in? Can we get our friends and family together and do this so we can all build each other up. Women think in that social way much more easily than men in a lot of ways. And having them as part of it is going to be essential because, we got to breed.
During the the Ukrainian civil war, women were doing almost all of the smuggling of arms, weapons, ammunition, bulletproof vests, and they were doing all of that because the men were all busy fighting. There wasn't anybody to bring them supplies to the front lines. They needed every single body holding a rifle on the front lines there. The women can play an important role. We don't want them on the front lines because it's they're too valuable as mothers and wives to be on the front lines, but or potential mothers and wives, but they still have a vital role to play in the defense of society. And very important role they play is demonstrating to our sons and daughters that they respect masculinity, they respect patriarchy, they respect the hierarchy of men that does defend society. And that in turn teaches them, the young men and women, the children, to fit into their role within society. It is very important. Most children get their idea of what their role in society should be from their mother, because that's something they get during their first few years of life, where they're primarily their mother's project, and around 7 they become their father's project more and more. And the other thing is for young boys, if as men being uncomfortable makes us better men, it's going to make our children, our sons, better boys, and eventually better men as well. I will exercise with my son. I will give him exercises to do, like planking and wall squats, invisible chair wall squats, and Superman's, where you go on your belly and pick the rest of your body up in the air. And I will make him do it. I don't really make him. He could stop anytime he wanted, but I will give him tasks to do that are incredibly uncomfortable. And he does them voluntarily. He voluntarily cooperates with me in doing those tasks because he says he wants to get better. He wants to become stronger. And that teaches him that discomfort is all discomfort is temporary. At worst case scenario, you eventually die. So all discomfort is temporary.
It all ends.
And discomfort for a purpose is valuable. Men are programmed to discount losses and to focus on what you win. We are willing to suffer tremendous pain, risk, loss, even death, to accomplish what we want to accomplish as men. That's how we're genetically programmed. Women, they're programmed differently. They're programmed to discount potential wins and to focus on potential losses. When you're looking after a baby, you have to be incredibly conservative in what you do. You can't decide, well, I think I'll leave the baby to go chase, to go do some hunting, do some gathering in the woods. I'm going to leave the baby behind. No, they would always take the baby with them. They'd be more likely to be hungry than they were, if necessary, than they were to leave their baby in a dangerous position. That is the right mindset for women. The other is the right mindset for men. And we need to cultivate that mindset as men. We need to be willing to think of ourselves as already dead, as already having suffered, and all of that is behind us, and what more could they do to us? And that we need to look at the absence of winning as being worse than the potential of losing. And we need to think of that not in a short-term battle, but in the terms of a very long-term battle. Our goal is not to die for what we believe in; it's to get the other side to die for what they believe in.
Yes, exactly right. That's it. That's beautiful.
We need to live.
We do. And we need to live beyond our own generation. It's not about us. You have countless generations of ancestors watching you and going, come on, son, you got this. You got this, my lad. You can do this. And you really can. They are with you. I really, truly believe that they are. They are in you. It's a biological reality. They are in you. And you are the product of many thousands upon thousands of generations of great men, the survivors, the winners, right? Most family lines ended with calamity or disease or poverty or famine or whatever it was, a war. The ones who died for their beliefs before they had children, that's the end of that line. It's over. right? But you are the survivor. You're still alive. You still have the capacity to make choices for yourself and to develop your sovereignty so that you can pass that gift on to your children, and we can build up the sovereign man again in the West across these generations to come. So if you're watching this and this is all alarming to you, you don't have to do it alone. And in fact, you should not and cannot do it alone. You need to do it with other men. Noah and I are both coaches. We work with people. This is not a sleazy sales pitch. This is, we genuinely want to help you guys and federate with you guys. You know, we want to help you to be the best man that you can be. And if we can get you to the state that you should be at, we damn well want you on our team. We want to federate with you. So partner up with us, and we can, guide you individually. We could do it, together. We can figure out a way. Noah's email's on the bottom there. His website's there if you want more information about how he does it. You can find me on Twitter, and you can also find me at the rrtv.live site. And fill in the contact form. If you know me, I'm reachable, but we want to help. We want to help you develop your sovereignty, and to develop your sovereignty, you must develop your agency, and you can't do that alone. As iron sharpens iron, we need to sharpen each other. So we have to start working together, guys. We've got to do it.
Yeah, well, James and I are busy rebuilding the West one set of testicles at a time. And it is possible, men, for you to find your masculinity again, and to do so in a way that is compatible with your Christianity, especially if in that case, talking to James, it is possible to be a man in the 21st century, and it is possible to federate together, and it is possible for us to re-win a certain amount of sovereignty. The full package is going to take generations, but we need to start now. There is not time to let it go for another generation. We can't sink back into comfort and ease and drug ourselves with all of the comforts of modern society. We're at a point now where they're about to take all those comforts away from us. Many of them they've already taken. And that's going to let people wake up in a way they've never woke up before. And I'm looking absolutely forward to, everyone's afraid of chaos. I'm looking forward to the chaos. I'm seeing the opportunity in the chaos. I'm discounting the risks. I'm discounting the risks, and I'm looking at the potential rewards. Right
Huge
now,
opportunity.
the world is up. Yeah, the world is up for grabs, and it'll be taken by men who are bold enough to do so.
Let that be us, and let's do it together, guys. Keep watching Patriarch Hour. Please share this video around. This really is the most important conversation of the year. I think people need to understand this stuff. They need to get on board. It's life and death now, and anything that Noah and I can do to help, just get in touch with us, and join our community that we're growing, championsofthelight.com. I'm going to redirect the URL soon so that you can get to the new site, but it's rrtv.live. If one of the moderators could put that up in the comments again, that would be great. And you can see Noah's site at smv4k.com. And of course, keep watching Patriarch Hour, because we're going to come back harder and bolder and more truthful and more encouraging every week, because this is the time for the patriarchy to start to rebuild. And, we've been poking around the concepts for 16 episodes now. Now it's time for action. Now we need to rally the men, and you need to rally each other, and we need to make a real movement based on action moving forward. And that's what we're going to do at Patriarch Hour. So thanks, Noah. It's been a great Patriarch hour and a half tonight.
The Patriarch 90 minutes.
Yeah, maybe it'll be Patriarch Day eventually, and we'll just do a massive stream. But if
they ever allow airfare, if they ever allow us to fly again, we need to have a Patriarch convention.
We certainly will. I think our time has come to create this community together and really grow it. And to all the feminists and whatnots coming in with their thumbs down, keep watching. Please keep watching, and please share your vitriol and your hatred of us on Twitter and on Facebook. Share it everywhere. Let everyone know what absolute scumbags we are. Let everyone know how evil and how perverted and how regressive we are, and what disgusting misogynistic pieces of shit we are. Tell everybody, please. Tell everybody.
Spread the fame of our toxic masculinity to the world.
Thank you. Well, it's been great, guys. Thanks for everyone at home. We love you guys, and you're in my prayers. I pray. I don't know you all personally, but I do pray for everyone who is watching, and I really hope that that this time is going to be a time of awakening for you, and that you will feel encouraged because, in my faith and in my development of my own sovereignty over the last year, and it's just still a work in progress. We're just getting started, baby. But in this time, I have come to not know any more fear about this stuff in my heart. I'm not worried. I know that there are threats, right? But I'm aware also that there are great opportunities, and I'm doing everything I can to prepare and to federate and to be ready for any kinds of chaos ahead. And I urge you guys to do the same. We can do this. Don't be afraid. We got this.
Excellent, James. Thank you very much for those encouraging words.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Noah. Thanks for your wisdom and your adroit analysis of human behavior. It's always a delight to listen to you and to hang out with you at this time.
Thanks.
All right. Bye, everyone at home. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.